How's everybody doing? Yeah? Was your first session good?
Yeah.
Mine too. I mean, the one I listened to is great. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Ronica Roth. I probably should have put that on the slide or something. But I'm not really using slides for this. I'm kind of the lead Agile coach, or kind of lead the coaching strategy for Rally Software. I live in Boulder, Colorado, in the U.S., which is where our headquarters is. And I'm very excited for my first trip to Australia, visiting Rally's Melbourne office. Got to go to Sydney too. Touched the South Pacific Ocean. Very exciting. Anyway, and I'm excited to be here today. And what I'm here to talk about is designing portfolio Kanbans. And what I really want to talk about is kind of how do you begin to use Agile and Lean techniques, not just to manage backlogs of stories to deliver projects, but to manage an entire program of projects or a portfolio of programs. And I want to do that by through telling Rally's story of how we are doing it and how we've evolved that. Because to be honest, I haven't found a whole lot of organizations yet who've solved the problem of how to do Agile portfolio management, but we're working at it really hard. So we're maybe not the perfect example because we're a relatively small software product company. We're by no means a huge telecom or bank, which is where you guys all seem to work. But I still think there's some lessons in there. So I want to start by, so what you see up here is it's a little bit cut off, but I want to make it big enough. But this is our, can you read that? All right. So this is our initiative level portfolio Kanban. And you can see kind of our policies. I'll make them big again. And I just want to kind of ask you to sort of look at that. And what do you notice about this Kanban board as you look at it? So it's kind of a view into what we're working on without the detail of the actual what are we working on.
So you got websites, policies.
Yeah, hang on a second. Really loud out there. Yeah, so we have policies, we have states, policies, and WIP limits, sort of. What do you notice about the WIP limits? So for example, in the building column, we have 22 initiatives out of a WIP limit of 12. That's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? I went yesterday to make the pictures of our Kanban board. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I'm in the portfolio steering meetings, so I know that we exceed our WIP limit on a regular basis. And you'll see that customer validation, assessing, ready, and collecting evidence all have a WIP limit of infinity, which one might argue is a WIP unlimit. Right? Yeah. So, whoops. We're learning, right? So we're still learning, and I think how many people use Kanban and use WIP limits? How many people have figured out what your WIP limit is? Yeah? How long did that take? All right, yeah. We're still learning. We're really new to this sort of level of management, so we feel good. We're still learning, and I think there's been a little resistance to the WIP limit thing, and so we decided to focus first on strategic alignment, and we'll get to WIP limit. Funnily enough, if you ask anyone in our company, what's our one weakness as an organization, I guarantee you 9 out of 10 people would say we can't say no to things. Pretty typical for a one-time startup, right?
How long have you been doing the WIP stuff?
We do Kanban at the team level. So our teams, we used to do Scrum. We did Scrum for, 5 years or something like that, 6 years. And then the delivery team switched to Kanban and to continuous development and continuous delivery and continuous deployment over time, those things. At the team level, in terms of execution, we do fine with WIP limits. We have excellent policies and great WIP limits, and we follow them. And when we fail to do that, we retrospect and blah, blah. Up at this portfolio level, it's been like, so what is this, June, July? Well, I've lost track. It's the wrong season here. It's been like this year, right? And in the beginning, there was, the emphasis was figuring out the policies and figuring out the steering cadence. So that's kind of where we're at. So, so this is what I'm going to kind of dive in a little bit more to the details of this stuff. But what's been interesting, I think, as I have been, so now taking some of this learning, I've been trying to help some of our bigger customers begin to bring Agile into the PMO and into this kind of portfolio level stuff. And in the beginning, my first thought was, okay, great, I'm going to come in and we're going to understand how you work today, and we're going to figure out how to get you to a more Agile way of working. We're going to redesign your process from top to bottom, or left to right, and figure it all out. And that turns out that's really hard, because I've got developers and project teams that have been really successful with Agile, but now I'm talking to people in the PMO and the business who have no idea what Agile is, and we're right back to we got to prove the value, and we got to. So you don't start with a complete redesign. It turns out what you start with is making work visible. Right? So yeah, we haven't figured out width limits yet, but what we have figured out is that it's really, really important to make all the work visible so that you can see it, and then to look at it every month. And it's been interesting because I would argue so I'm a stakeholder in this case. I'm on the services side, and I care about what we're building, and I influence what we're building because I speak to our customers. And as a stakeholder in the steering meetings around initiatives, those first few meetings, I would say the first 3 months, I was like, whatever, I'm looking at 1 million cards. I think I have a picture of that. I'm like, where'd it go? All right, this isn't a card, this is more of a list, but I'm looking at like 1 million things we're working on, and you're just kind of statusing them. And I'm checked out. And it's amazing. I would never let that happen at one of my customers, right? One of my clients. But it was my own company, and I'm like, oh, this meeting's boring. I guess I'll do something else. Instead of sort of saying, hey guys, why is this meeting boring? But we started by making the work visible, and although that may not have been exciting to me, there were certain stakeholders to which it was thrilling, right? And it began to drive some hard conversations. And then the next step was to get to a place where we're actually steering. And I would say that the second evolution of our portfolio management has been to improve the visibility even more and redesign a steering meeting that is actually decision-oriented, right? And so we get information, as a stakeholder, I get information before I arrive as to what decisions we're going to be asked about, right? I get links to these views, and I walk in, and now we're not just statusing, and it's awesome. And yes, I totally blurred out what the actual work is we're doing. I was going to show you the real work, and I decided that might be weird. Anyway, so let's see, what was I going to do next? Just for one bit of context, this is my only slide. These lists kind of come from me, kind of come from Dean Leffingwell a little bit, right? But when we talk about what is Agile portfolio management, how is that different? So what does it mean to apply Agile and Lean principles at the portfolio level? It's a move from traditional to Agile, right? So we go from being schedule focused, is everything on time, right, to being very much about value focused. How close are we to getting the value that we're looking for? Time is still important, right? If your options are expiring, if delivering it later you kind of run out of your market window, that's important. But it's a conversation about value, right? We talk about incremental budgets, right? So this idea that I think incremental budgets is another way of saying make projects really small, much smaller, fund a small project, and then go to fund another project. The biggest thing for me is the two things that have been, so I think being value-focused, Rally already does that. We were born that way. We've been Agile from the day we started. Incremental funding, this idea of smaller wins, we're really good at that. It's baked into our DNA. Thinking in terms of teams as opposed to individuals, we do that automatically. That's how we've always been that way, right? We've never done traditional resource assignment, flowing features through teams instead of assigning FTEs to projects. Rally's never done it any other way, so none of that was radical. But this idea of continuous steering and guiding to strategy has been huge. And that's been the real shift for us. So again, the first step is just to see what are we doing today, what is all the work, and what phase is it in, right? So let's get rid of that, because hang on one second. So going back to, well, actually I'm going to show you something else. No, I'll stick to this. Sorry, can't work my machine. There we go. All right, so going back to the policies, right, just writing out these sort of phases or steps. So these are initiatives. We actually have 4 levels, but the top level is strategy, right? And the strategy ties to things like the company has a true north for the year and a set of mother strategies that are designed to get us to our true north. And that language comes out of, does it come out of the 5th discipline? Is it Senge? I forget. We read a lot of books at Rally, and so everything we do is based on some model combined with some other model and tweaked, right? But so that's what we read, a lot of books, you know. And so the book we read, I'm pretty sure it was the 5th discipline, but I don't know. So we have mother strategies, true north and mother strategies for the year, and that's what we as a company are trying to accomplish. And so then those of us who are building software or building new services or figuring out how to support our customers are looking to do the initiatives that support those mother strategies. So as a developer, in using looking at Rally, I can click on any one of these things and look up the tree and figure out, is this initiative we're working on something that furthers one of the mother strategies? Or is it something else, right? Is it operational? Is it efficiency? You know, something like that, right? Very, very powerful. And then, but the levels I'm going to talk about today, we have initiative and then what's called an enhancement. It's a terrible name, very political. It's a feature. Let's call it a feature. Enhancement was a dumb word. But I can say that because I'm 5,000 miles, however many thousand miles away, and they can't hear me. Right? So these are initiatives. So initiatives go through phases, like the first phase is customer validation, right? This is a little bit of the kind of design thinking approach, 4 steps to the epiphany. Just because I think it's a great idea, I have to validate that it is a great idea. Talk to actual customers to find out if they actually want us to build this thing and help us refine our understanding of it. Once we've done that, there's some sort of assessments, right? What's it going to cost? What do we think the value is? Kind of high-level business case. We're trying to get disciplined. I heard talking about the discipline in Scrum that makes it work. It turns out that's the hard part. Kanban requires discipline as well. Trying to be value-driven and tied to strategy and steer effectively also requires discipline, right? I have to know what I think the value of this thing is to start before I can assess if that changes. So we do that. And once that's done, it's ready, right? And this is where the steering comes in, because this is where the stakeholders, right? So the ready column of work is ranked, right? So our product managers, product owners, or ranked product managers, I guess, are ranking initiatives. And that might be something where in a steering, so every month we review this stuff, and the question to the stakeholders might be, is this the right ranking? Right? The thing at the top is what we're going to work on next. And by the way, this thing at the top of building is almost finished, and we're about to pull something in. We just want to make sure you guys know that, right? It's a constant opportunity to reflect on, is it the right thing? Do we have new information that would change the way we think about it? And then things are building.
Question for a second.
Yeah, please.
One of the things with Kanban is kind of stuff comes in at the start and then goes through to completion. But presumably one of the things that you're talking about is that stuff comes in at the start and then should actually get thrown away potentially if it's...
Absolutely.
So you say
what does that look like?
Where things go through to the next stage, but do you have things about why things would not go through to the next stage?
Yeah, absolutely. That things get killed, right? So we collect evidence and we find out that the customers won't pay for that or don't want it, or
it's just one of the outcomes of that stage.
It's just one of the outcomes, yeah, and it gets talked about. I realize I don't know what the view for that is. I assume they just think to bring it to us. Does it happen often enough? Things can also languish, right?
Yeah, because it looks like your ready column things could just potentially just get ranked and they just keep being moved down and down and down, kind of in the backlog of things that we might do if we ever get
Yeah, that's
if we don't ever have to do that.
right. About capability. Yes, you're right. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say the same thing. How does it? So you just close them? They just hit?
They go off the board. I believe there's another report, or there's other ways or views where you could see what are the things that got stopped. And I'm sure there's a state for it. I can't tell you what it is off the top of my head. Yeah.
I was just going to ask that, so, the first two steps, validation and the assessing.
Yeah.
Do you have anything there where you're eliminating waste at that point? Or, because I could imagine, or is that just somewhere where you can dream up anything you think might want to go through and anything can get worked on? Like, how do you work out what anything spends there?
Right.
Eventually throw it away because you don't want it.
Right. I think we have a pretty good discipline around that because we're so collaborative. So it's kind of hard to be off on your own, diving in on a pet project for a really long time. It's less about the steering committee and stakeholders and more, I think, about the internal processes around how product management decides on its priorities and where it wants to spend its time and when do we decide. And part of that, you can see it a little bit. So one of the things we can see is in-column aging, right? So this thing right here is 12 weeks in the building column, right? So if something were sitting in customer validation for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you can set it, right? Don't show me how long it's been here until it's been here too long. 6 weeks or whatever that, 4 weeks to 2 weeks, right? So we had, again, and that's just about visual cues, right? I'm showing you a tool because we're a global company, but it's however you create a visual cue, and how do you create a constant revisiting, right, of that stuff. So you're right, that would be a place for waste, right? We get stuck there. Do we ever decide to say no? If we do all this work, but we just green light everything, that'd be a problem, which is pretty much, I think, why WIP limits will be investigated next, right? Yeah.
How do you balance how much effort? It seems awesome. It seems that there's a fair bit of effort and investment in the actual process and the management of all these things versus actually getting the shit done, right? So, I don't know, I look at this and I go, well, there's lots of columns, there's lots of things that you're doing, there's lots of assessment, steering committee, and getting together and filtering and looking and so on. How do you balance how much effort you put on that versus how much effort you put on even the resources and investment, right? Versus you get stuff that you get done, right? Because you might be
We get stuff done.
filtering things through, where you could just.
Well, I see what you're saying. It's interesting. So again, this is, a fair bit of several months into this process, right? But in the beginning, it was make work visible, make visible what we already do, right? What we're already doing, and just to see it, because what we're looking for is waste in the system, right? I'm not looking to create process for the sake of process or meetings for the sake of meetings. I'm looking to make better decisions. It was driven by a problem, right? The problem we had, and maybe that's an excellent place to start, right? Why do all this? Why add all this process, right? I think for a lot of companies, you have sort of a traditional PMO that maybe is very schedule driven and they have too much going on and blah, blah, blah. That wasn't our problem. Our problem was we were really good at the low level features. We're cranking out features all the time, getting all kinds of little stuff done, and we were missing the big picture, right? So one of the challenges, as a company that's always been agile, one of our challenges was that we steer too easily, right? I can change my mind all the time. Right? I can break things down really small. I can do this little thing and this little thing, and we got something out. Now we're on this shiny object, right? We're very shiny object. Squirrel! There's a team recently named themselves Squirrel. Squirrel! Right? And so it's funny. I'm emphasizing steering, but really our problem was that we were oversteering, and what we needed was to see the big picture. Are we actually getting initiatives done? And are the initiatives we're working on actually aligned to the big goals that we're trying to accomplish as a company and as an engineering organization? So it's not just about, right? And big picture investments. How are we spending our money? So I'll show you another. Actually, I'm going to show you this one.
When you say big, how big is how many people do you have working and how many in the steering? Are we talking hundreds of people? Are we talking a few dozen?
That's an excellent question. Our engineering group Yeah, that's good. How many teams? Do I even know the answer to that? Hang on. So I'm not in R&D, and we keep growing. So who can tell? Let's call it 8 teams, 8 engineering teams. I don't know, something like that, right? And the people in the steering so in the steering committee. So at the initiative level, I've got the product managers who shepherd initiatives through. So that's maybe 2 or 3 people, right? I've got product owners. In some cases, that's overlap, but right, who are really just there to hear the thinking and support the detail. So that's a couple people, 3, call it. And then I've got some stakeholders from different departments who represent the voice of the customer, and that's maybe 5 or 6 people who aren't in engineering at all. They do something else, right? Someone like me who's in services, someone who's in customer support, right? So I don't think it's a huge amount. I don't think it doesn't feel wasteful. It feels like it's an opportunity to make sure we're working on the highest value things, that we actually get stuff done, right? Because that was our problem, and that we bring the great minds of the company together to make some of these decisions. We're a very collaborative company, right? We thrive on that, right? So I think for us it's a good investment, and we have a person currently in a role called methodologist who's there to think about process for the engineering team. It's someone who was a coach and was a product owner. He's been at the company longer than I have, so a long time. And his whole job is, while everyone else is getting stuff done, he's thinking about how to provide better visibility tools and collaboration tools and lightweight processes that help us be more successful and help retrospect on that, right? One of the advantages we have is we have all these Agile coaches that work for us, right? So he's got a whole set of advisors to offer. Maybe that's bad sometimes, right? So I'll just get to talking about alignment, strategic alignment. So this chart shows throughput in terms of number of stories. So in case you're worried we're not getting anything done, this one doesn't count because we weren't really tracking at that point. And the colors indicate what sort of investment allocations, right? So we make a decision that says we want to spend, this is architecture, right? So we have a decision that we want to spend 20% of our investment on architecture. Are we actually doing that? When people pull in work and start delivering on features and stories, and teams decide what to work on week after week, are we actually investing 20% in architecture, or are they off on some other thing, chasing some other grail, right? So we're watching that too, right? Not that there's anything, it's just about alignment. Are we working on what we said we were going to work on? And if we're not, why? Maybe it's the right thing to do, but we just need to set expectations, right? So again, steering is the primary goal here. The way this steering happens, it happens on a cadence. So going back to your question, so this a review of our investments, how are we investing, happens quarterly. On a quarterly basis, we look at our allocation, where are we spending our money in terms of R&D, and we adjust that. We steer initiatives monthly. So again, it's a continuous deployment shop, so there's a lot of stuff that gets done in that month. And we steer the enhancements or the features weekly, and that's the product owners. That's the product owners looking at what are we actually getting out of the door and what's getting delivered, right? And so they'll use a view like weekly, right? So this is a view that forget the stuff that's beforehand, forget the stuff that's been released. We're looking at what's actually happening, what's in progress, right? What's about to be finished, what's about to go out the door, what's about to be released, so we can tell product marketing, so they can tell the rest of the company, right? And it's kind of nice because we have a little agenda for the steering meeting, right? So what's changed in the last week? Are there any adaptations we need to do based on higher level steering, right? It's all just about staying in alignment. So let me bring it back to you guys. So who's doing this kind of high level portfolio kind of steering or review? Awesome. What kind of decisions get made today in those meetings? Are they status meetings or decisions get made? Making investment decisions? Cool. Projects get killed?
Yep, big ones.
Yeah? Awesome. What makes a project get killed? spending lots of
You're not
money.
getting any value.
Yeah, that's hard. One of the hard parts, I think, one of the things to tackle in this whole process after WIP limits, maybe, I think, is measuring value. Right? I don't know how good we are at that, but I guarantee there's always more to be done. How are you guys measuring value?
So comes down to feature value. So we measure how much this feature is worth, and we're actually shifting more towards lean startup model, actually measuring the impact of change, whether it's successful or not. So
Yeah.
we've still got a long journey to go on benefits realization. but-
Yes, that's hard. It's funny. You ever Don Reinertson, Product Development Flow? It's just so much math and formulas in that book, right? It's a little daunting, especially for a little lowly BA like me, ex-journalist. I can't read it. But what I love about Reinertson is he really blows you away with all the things you could measure, right? Cost of delay, right? Really complicated measures for cost of delay, and you're pretty sure it would save your business if you could figure it out. But it's hard to figure out. And just when you're ready to give up on all these formulas, he says, and if you come up with any scheme that's anything like a measure, or puts a number on value, if you scored value on a scale of 0 to 100 and did that with any kind of discipline, you'd be better off than you probably are today, because it's so hard to measure value and people struggle with it so much, right? So it's interesting. I mean, we're trying to be value driven, and that can just be so hard to do. So one of the things we're finding, going back to why are we having all these meetings, is we're finding that having conversations about it is half the battle. If we just have conversations about value, then we're thinking about value, we're making decisions around value, right? But it's hard. Who else has a good solve for value? Or what do you got? Oh, give me what you got.
So I had a question more around your product people or your portfolio vision, and how do you make the decision of what you're going to focus on from the team?
No, I'm just kidding. No, there's a lot. There's a lot of it's levels of planning, right? We do levels of planning here, just like we do them at the project level. So there's a lot of work done. So once the company sets the direction for the year, then that product group gets together, and the engineering group and the architecture group, and they get together in the beginning of the year, and they set a direction for the year.
But is it all based on ROI or value, like you're talking about?
I think we're pretty good at having value conversations. I think that's been part of the shift, right? So doing this, making this stuff visible, having these steering meetings, having the steering meetings become decisional, that all got us to, if we're going to make decisions, they have to be value-based decisions. And so that's what's leading us to that improvement around value. I think they're about value. I mean, the hard part is you can argue, right? So I'll give an example though. So part of getting value driven, I think, is about being able to talk long-term investment in a way that was difficult before. So I said, we can do that squirrel thing and chase stuff. So there was a time where we were growing, our customer base was growing really fast, our users were growing really fast, and our architecture was not gonna make it, and development was grinding to a halt, and we had the data to show it. Things weren't getting done. And so because we were able to engineering was able to make a value case for delivering 0 features for 1 quarter while they worked on infrastructure and architecture and performance and scalability. And I don't know how many companies, I haven't seen that many companies who are willing to do that. Right? But we could do it because, in a very collaborative way, with a lot of really good information, we could have a value conversation about how the investment was going to pay off. And it was important to then have the discipline to, so 2 things happened. The discipline to follow up and show that it worked, I think, was key, because believe me, it's going to happen again. So, right, if we succeed. And so you have to do that follow-up, right? One of the fields that we had was collecting evidence. Right? Once an initiative gets delivered, you have to put it into collecting evidence and find out if you got the value you meant to and learn from it. right? So that was key. And I think the other key is that while all that stuff was happening, that gave the product team, product management team, product ownership team, the time, because they were a little less hands-on in their steering during all of that. That gave them a lot of time to do some visioning and some road mapping about when we come out of this period, what are we going to deliver? Because people are going to be hungry, and it's got to be the most valuable stuff, and it's got to be what customers want, right? Because we've just asked them to wait. Right? And that was really powerful too, because that whole slow down to speed up thing, right? So we slowed down to speed up engineering-wise, but also product management-wise. And I think in that time, product management kind of really built some new, I don't know, maybe network ties, some new collaborative ties, some new discipline around how to collaborate on value and vision, whereas I think they'd been a disjointed group. So it was a powerful time, and like I said, I don't know too many folks who've done it. Just looking at my notes, right? Go ahead.
Question.
Yeah.
When you talk about, so we have a very similar setup in our team. But the beauty is that our customer right now is actually internal, right? So
Okay.
we're delivering a big piece of social transformation for a company, but we do it internally. Because most of our customers are people that we can drag into our team, so they
Right.
see the so the customer validation and the collective evidence happens relatively naturally because it's right there, right?
Yes.
The person uses it and goes, this is shit, and then we have to change
Yes.
it. Or the person goes, no, I want that, I want this because it's what I need to do.
Right.
How do you do it when you're talking about customers that are external? What do you guys do in particular? Do you do the traditional method of focus groups and or do you drag it into your...
We don't do focus groups. We do a lot of interviews. We'll call people up, and it's amazing to me the extent to which people want to tell you, they want to be heard. Everyone wants to be heard and understood. So when you call up and say, what are your challenges? What do you need? Hey, let me tell you what we're thinking about, and involve them. You'll find... Part of it's on the phone, some of it's in person, and video and all those other tools, and then some of it is like when we developed this stuff, this portfolio management stuff, we built a complete throwaway kind of proof of concept. So a customer had built some of it, and they gave it to us, and we developed it, and we tested ideas. So really following the 4 steps of the Epiphany method. Again, we read a book, borrowed a model, because that's what we do, and then we got these folks engaged, and the payoff for them was they got a tool they could use right away to give them the visibility they needed, and they got to have constant conversations, and they asked for things, and we built them. And validated our solution that way. So we try to do that. The other thing we do, I think, that helps with not so much the upfront validation maybe, but down the road validation is because of our continuous deployment model, we also have invested heavily in the ability to turn features on and off because we're a SaaS product. So we try things on ourselves, and then we try them on a select group of customers, and maybe the one who asked for it gets to try it before we send it out. So we do a lot of validation in process as well. And I think that's important, right? Because that's how you get value driven. It's hard. I just had the great pleasure of having a one-day workshop. George Kimball from the D School, which is out of Stanford University, did a one-day workshop on design thinking for our coaching group. And it's like I thought I know how to do this stuff. I used to be a product owner. I used to be a business analyst. I know how to call up my customers and ask them. But it's like he challenged me to a whole other way of thinking about empathy interviews and how to understand your customer, and really challenged me to do my homework before I just charge ahead with things. And it was powerful, right? And it goes back to, right, how do you do customer validation before you go forward? Yeah.
Could I ask how much of the user experience discipline is important in that aspect of your work?
User experience discipline, a lot in our engineering for sure. Yeah. It's funny, we had no UX for a long time, which anyone who saw our product, I was a customer before I worked at Rally, and boy, that was obvious. Right? And then we had one for a really long time, and that was probably hard. I don't know how she stayed with us. She left to have a baby at one point. It's probably for sanity. But now we're building up a team, and UX is so much more a part of our process and a part of how things get done. I can't remember if it's. I don't think it's a step in our Kanban, but Oops, that's not what I wanted. No, I don't. I think it's just how we get stories ready is through UX. So yeah, that's become a big part of it. You know, and again, I'm telling you these stories because I could talk all day about theory, about what I think should happen in the portfolio level, but we're learning right along with everyone else. And so I couldn't think of anything better than telling our story because it's a story of continuous improvement. It's a story of, wow, we're getting it wrong. Wow, we have no whip limits. Wow, we break our whip limit all the time. Wow, we are the Agile company and we were having status meetings that were boring. That's so sad, right? But we've continually improved and now we have decision meetings and we're working towards ever increasing our understanding of value and we're working towards learning how to say no, right? I mean, it's powerful. And the opportunity is fantastic. We're setting ourselves up to get things done, work on the most important things, stop working on things that aren't important. You know, and I think in talking to our developers, there's a greater level of confidence that what I'm building is I'm working on the right thing. I mean, it's powerful and it's aligned to what we're trying to accomplish in any given